Well, my first guest in this historic podcast for Real Producers is none other than the first ever Real Producer magazine cover, Mr. Dick Richwine himself. Dick, thanks for joining us.
You're very welcome, Remington. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you.
Well, in the first episode, we went over why Real Producers was created and the excitement around the product when it first came out. And I think it's important to share why we chose you to be on the cover of the first one. First things first, everyone who's ever been on the cover of any Real Producers was nominated. That's the difference between us and pretty much any other magazine I've ever heard of, which is, you have to pay to be on the cover or, something like that. I spent all my time before the magazine came out asking people, whose story do you want to know? Who do you want to hear about? And the overwhelming response was Mr. Dick Richwine. First person in Indianapolis, Indiana ever to do over 100 million as a realtor, and has constantly been number one for years on end. Dick, you got started in May of 1977. So about 45 years. Let's start there. What's changed in real estate from when you started till now?
Oh my goodness, Remington. So many changes. Back when I first got in the business, I was theoretically at least working part-time. By part-time, I meant I was managing 25 engineers at a government facility, working 50 hours a week, and then 50 hours a week selling real estate part-time. But irregardless of the hours I put in, first getting into the business, it was a situation where you didn't have computers. You didn't have a BLC that you could just sit down and have a computer screen in front of you and pull up listings. We got multiple listing books. Once a week, these books would come out. And if we wanted to show, anytime we wanted to show a house, we had to drive to the listing realtor's office and pick up a key, and then, of course, take the key back afterwards. And it was a very, very, very cumbersome activity.
Sure.
Because, again, before cell phones, before computers, and having these multiple listing books. And one of the things that I learned very early on, because I couldn't be in the office during the regular weekdays, I would come in on Saturday mornings and do floor time. And I still believe in floor time for people who are looking for clients and have the time to spend chasing new business. Floor time can be a very, very good thing. But back when it started, I was given by my owner at the time some cassettes to listen to on how to sell more real estate. And every single one that he had given me was a push type thing where if somebody called in on floor, don't give them any information whatsoever until you get their name, rank, and serial number, or so it seemed. And that's not my style. The first Saturday morning I went in, I tried that. It did not work for me. I told my boss at the time, I said, that's not going to continue. So the next Saturday when I came in, what I had done, I had prepared a report showing all the listings that our office had, keeping in mind that we didn't have the BLC system with the computers and cell phones where you could access everything. You got it simply out of these books. And I would put a report together for each Saturday showing our current listings. And when somebody would call, versus demanding to know who they were and getting their contact information, I would simply say, hey, I'm so-and-so. And then, of course, they'd give me their name. But before I would ask for any other information from them, I'd say, now, what is it you're calling about? They would tell me, and I would give them all the information they wanted. But then I would follow up by saying something to the effect, now, I also have a report with all of our listings that we have that might be of benefit to you. If you'd like it, no cost to you, I'd be happy to mail it to you. This was before email too.
Yeah.
And almost universally, they would say, oh, absolutely, would you send that to me? And then, of course, they gave me their mailing information. And this was before you could even capture their phone numbers when they would call in. And I would say, hey, just in case there'd be a follow-up, how can I best get a hold of you? And I'd get their contact info. So I would establish a relationship with people based upon what can I do for you right out of the gate instead of what are you going to do for me?
Yeah.
And that's how I based my business. It became very successful getting out of the gate that way. And it's the way I've tried to continue doing my business from that point forward.
What's interesting about, as I'm hearing you talk about the changes and what it used to be like, I mean, that's a pretty aggressive change from the 70s till now when you add in all the technology that was created in that time. What has never been replaced is that physical touch of a realtor, of a person guiding someone through the process. And as we think about all the disruptors, and a lot of disruptors even in the last 5 years that have come that are kind of attacking the real estate industry, or at least the life of the realtor, one thing that will never change is someone's ability to walk them through the process, and that human connection. And so if you go all the way back to delivering books, and like what the reason that worked for you was because people felt taken care of, and that like they actually had someone who knew more about real estate than they did walking them through the process. I imagine that's why you were rising in the ranks as quickly as you were.
It's that human touch, Remington, and that can never be replaced. Too many times in today's market, I'll see realtors that hardly ever talk to their clients. They'll email them, they'll text them. And yes, a lot of people like to work through text, but it does pay every now and then to pick up that phone and actually be able to talk to someone when you're not meeting with them, to be able to do that. And I have found that has really stood the test of time. There's just no substitute for people feeling like you're putting them first. And yes, you can do some of that through emails, you can do some of that through text messages, but when you don't have the time, or they don't, to actually physically meet with them, there's no substitute in my book then for talking to them on the phone, because through your tone of voice and the way you talk to them, they can tell that you're really empathizing with them, that you're putting their interests first, something you can do much better than through an impersonal text or email. And that's something that I always try to follow up with, no matter how often I text or email people. I always try to follow up with that personal contact on a regular basis also.
So jumping ahead a little bit, Dick, what's crazy to me is when we first put you on the cover in June of 2015, the first issue ever, I believe you were in the 50s in terms of production, 50 million, 56 million, something like that. And within 5 years, you basically doubled it to be the first realtor in Indiana history to do 100 million. So at the time, you had still been top 5, number 1 many times in the city of Indianapolis. How do you take such a successful career and then double it and even go beyond to set those records? What does that look like?
Well, maybe I operate a little differently than a lot of people. In my case, I always try to keep my priorities in order. I see too many realtors that are just work, 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 and that's a number one with them. In my case, and part of why I'm still in the business after all these years, I try to have a proper balance in what I do. And it starts with priorities, your faith, your family, and then your vocation. But within that time you spend on your vocation, it's amazing how if you've got the right attitude and have a proper balance in your life, you can be more enthusiastic, more dedicated for the time that you spend with people. And part of the trick, too, is not letting people think that you're not 24/7. One of the things that I've done over time, let's say I wake up in the middle of the night and I'll check emails, and anything that came in late, maybe I need to respond to, instead of waiting until the next morning, I'll go ahead and respond. And it's amazing how that next day they'll call and say, boy, you really are a 24/7 realtor, aren't you? Well, not really, but I always try to give that perception that I am. And I'm never too far from being able to get back to somebody, because even when I'm on vacation, I monitor my emails, text messages, all those things. And it does pay to be able to do that. And I've learned to be able to compartmentalize. But following up on how am I able to go from 50 to the year before, right around 150 million has been our top year. Well, it starts by hiring good people, because back when I started and I was doing things by myself, and I did have to have a secretary assistant behind the scenes to handle paperwork and all that during the daytime. But I have found by hiring good people and learning how to delegate, you're able to basically have yourself in more than one place at any given time. Anybody in a successful business, when they have one store that's operating well, they open another one and then another one. They learn how to branch themselves out by getting lots of good help, and it really does pay off. So by hiring a lot of good people, and then with the current techniques we have where you're not having to chase a lot of things down because of your computers and emails, et cetera, that helps save a lot of driving time in a lot of cases. So in those 50 hours a week, and that's what I try to do is work 50 hours a week. Within those 50 hours, I try to maximize the time I spend on business and giving team members the things that they need to know and work with also.
You've mentioned in the past some pretty cool, once you start doing 100, 150 million, you've sold some pretty big homes, cool stories, cool people. I remember one time we did an interview at your house in Geist, talking about some of the Pacers you've sold to. I think Paul George and Reggie were on that list. What were some of your favorite stories and memories of selling houses to maybe people we know?
All right. Well, one that I really treasure, and it involves Reggie Miller. And Reggie, for as much as he's been in the limelight during his basketball career, and what an awesome player he was, as we all know, and then being on the air, on doing NBA telecasts and so forth, you'd think he's a very, very outgoing person. But the Reggie I knew was somebody that kind of liked to be behind the scenes and have that quiet time. And what I'll never forget is when we sold his house out on Geist, he really said, I really don't need to meet with the buyers. And when it's time to close, get the closing lady, bring her to my house, and then you can go to the title company and close with the buyers. So that's what we did. But here's the interesting part, and to show you what a generous, giving person that he is. I had told him that Mr. Buyer fell in love with his wine cellar and all the different kinds of wine that he had in the wine cellar. And once we wrapped up the closing at the title company, I said, by the way, something Reggie really wants you people to have, it's a closing gift for you. That wine that was in that wine cellar is yours.
All the wine?
Yeah, I mean, there must have been well over $10,000 worth of wine there.
Wow.
And either all of it or most of it, he did leave for those buyers, and they could not have been happier. That's just Reggie. He's a very generous, giving person, and he sure made some people extra happy on that given day.
Yeah, no doubt. I've actually, I remember, and it's not just Reggie. I mean, do a lot of Pacer players like to buy property out there in Geist, or where do you see most of, and Coles players too? Like, to be honest, you'd think with them walking around, we'd know where they all live, but I don't know where any of them live. Do they like that Geist area?
Several of them do and have, from Austin Crozier back when to obviously Paul George. And one interesting one with Paul, when we closed with Paul, when he bought his Geist front home, we closed downtown at the Pacers facility. And I'll never forget that once we wrapped up the closing, he took the time for pictures, interviews, autographing shirts, basketballs, anything at all. He took an inordinate amount of extra time, as busy as he was, to spend time with us in helping take care of things that we wanted to pass on to other people, a paraphernalia and so forth. He was a super, super guy also to spend time with.
Dick, I didn't plan on asking you this, but I am just curious. How do you get, and maybe if I'm listening to this podcast, I'm not interested in working with celebrities. Maybe I am, but just luxury listings in general, that's a question we typically ask. How do you get networking with those with celebrities and with people that are buying, extraordinary houses? How do you get into that? Because when you first started, you were, if I remember your story right, engineering, not really. You had no path to being a realtor and decided to do it. So you weren't well connected before. How do you work yourself up to that?
All right. Well, first, let me tell you a really interesting story when I first got into the business. For those that think, okay, you sold over $2 billion worth of real estate in your career and you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. It wasn't that way at all. My very first listing was a property down on the Muscatatuck River. It was a cabin with a couple acres of ground right there on the river for like $3,500. And I had this family that called and said, hey, this sounds like a property exactly like what we're looking for. How about taking us down there this Saturday morning? I said, well, sure, I'd be happy to do it. So anyway, I show up at the office in my van, figuring I will haul them down there. No, they had their station wagon. And for any of you who've ever seen any of Chevy Chase's movies, especially the one where they went out to California on vacation, where they had the husband, wife, the two kids,
the Woody station wagon,
the dog, the station wagon. That's what they had. They had everything. The grandmother too, a pet dog, and all their fishing gear, picnic equipment. And they said, no, we'll just follow you. Look, we've got all this stuff. We'll follow you down there. So they did. And they fished, they picnicked, they had a great time. The kids really seemed to enjoy it. So at the end of the afternoon, I spent 5-6 hours with them there. At the end of the afternoon, they put everything back together, got back in the van, and I said, wait a minute, what's going on here? I walked over and knocked on his window, and he rolled his window down and said, yes. And I said, well, it seemed like you had a very good time. He said, yes, we did, even better than we thought we would have. And I said, well, I just happen to have a purchase agreement with me. Back then you had your clipboard with the agreement and the carbon paper and do everything.
Yeah.
I just happened to have it here with me. He looked at me incredulously and he said, what? We're not interested in buying this. We just wanted to get away for a day. And we had a great time. Thank you. Rolled up his window and peeled dirt out as he put the vehicle in reverse. And that was my first real listing. Okay. So
that is
thank goodness
incredible.
it improved from there. But how it came around to some of the celebrities, the athletes, et cetera, was I started marketing a lot of properties for the Shorewood Corporation out there at Geist, including some acreage properties in the area. And just by design and the advertising I was doing back then, in the newspapers and phone calls and so on, like calling the Pacer organization, calling the Colts, et cetera, when they came to town, was letting people know and getting them information on properties. And it seemed like every time I would do a market analysis and list a really nice property, because marketing lots of land and what a lot of realtors didn't understand, that leads to houses, because most people buying a property they're going to build on will have a house to sell, and then maybe you can hook them up with a builder. So anyway, that by marketing those properties and getting the word out to the organizations that these athletes were a part of, it got the word out. And then some of them would call, some of them would tell some of their athlete friends, for example, and one thing would just lead to another. And it seemed like every time I'd put one deal like that together, there'd be a couple of others that would wind up happening. So it just kind of through the things I did in the business, it just seemed to build up to that. And it started paying off that way.
I'm surprised none of the Pacer players were interested in that $3,500 property in that first story. That's incredible. I had not heard that, Dick. That's pretty crazy how far you've come. Well, with the limited time we have left, I would like you, again, and just to remind the listener, Dick Richwine, the first ever cover for Real Producers. Since that time, I mean, we're now in 2023, 8 years. We're in 120 markets with thousands of covers since then. If I'm listening to this and I'm listening to someone of your stature, Dick, been in the business for this long, what's the hope that you have for the future? You've seen every recession, you've seen every price hike, mortgage interest rate, you've seen everything over the course of 45 years. Right now, in this given moment, we're in a position where for lack of a better term, we've been fat and happy and things have been great for 5 or even 10 years in most markets. And now it's slowing down a little bit and people are considering, should I even be in this industry or should I do something else? Or what is the hope for real estate, the future? What is your answer to that?
I don't think there's ever a bad time to be in this business if you're a good realtor. And by that, I mean, if you're somebody that truly cares more about your clients than you do yourself, okay, and the time you put in, you'll find that even in the down markets, there'll be plenty of opportunities for you. And that's what I have found over the years. I mean, let's face it, the last couple of years, like shooting fish in a barrel, you could just be getting into the business and find business there. People were buying and selling, and people selling were getting above list price. It was just a tremendous, tremendous market to be in. And we knew it wouldn't last. And here in the last 3 months in particular, it has really started slowing down. The rising of interest rates going from 3%, in some cases less, to now in that 7% range. That has slowed things down. So the market has really started slowing down. And looking ahead, I see it as an opportunity for those of us that truly enjoy being in the business, that truly enjoy working with people. That business is still going to be there. It may take a little bit longer in working with people. It may take a little bit longer to sell houses. But if you do it the right way, there's always going to be buyers out there. But it takes a little more creativity at times. But if you truly want to be in this business and truly want to put those clients first, you're going to find there's still business there. You may need to do more open houses, maybe more cold calls, maybe more target mailings, but the business, more social media activities, but the business will still be there. And one of the things that fueled me when I first got into the business, and it's been a trademark of mine, and that is giving. The real happiness comes from giving. And in this business, if you give of your time and talents, your energy, and do everything you can to put those clients, make them number one, it's amazing how you do get more business and more people do want to work with you. And toward that end, so many realtors don't have time for the people in the peripheral businesses, like appraisers. An appraiser will call wanting some information. Don't have time for an appraiser. A lot of realtors just never get around to calling them back, or title people calling wanting information, just don't have time. I have found that if you return those calls, it's amazing how those people can be good referral sources for future business. I'm constantly looking, as I'm nice to people, that maybe somehow, some way, these people will recommend me when it comes time for them or somebody they know to do business. And it does pay off, very much so. And one last thing I'll say, it doesn't cost anything to be thankful for what you have. It doesn't cost anything when you're in a restaurant to always compliment your servers on what they do, to compliment people who do anything for you, whether it's somebody going to make a copy for you in the office, whatever it is, or people putting your listings in the computer system. Thank them for what they do. And it's amazing how, and realtors, working with realtors and making sure that you do the best you can on their behalf while you're representing your own clients totally as well, how they'll want to work with you in the future. So it's all about building relationships, being generous and giving of your time and energy and talents to people, and then knowing you mean it when you say that you put their interests ahead of your own. You always want to give more than you expect to get back, and you do get back over and over and over again.
Dick, this has been great, and we're out of time, but I do want to share my favorite quote from what you just said. This is something that is worth a tweet if you're listening. I don't think there's ever a bad time to be in this business if you're a good realtor. That is subtle, yet very true. Mr. Dick Richwine, thanks for joining us for the, second episode in the Real Producers podcast. Appreciate having you.
I enjoyed it very much. I really appreciate the opportunity, Remington, anytime.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Real Producers, and especially thank you for sharing the show with other agents and reviewing the show on your favorite app. Every time you share the show, you are potentially changing someone else's life. To learn more about Real Producers Magazine and events in your area, visit realproducersmag.com and stay tuned for the next episode of Real Producers.